Hey, Morgan.
Hey, Alexis.
So this is exciting because it's our first episode of our podcast called Switching the Narrative.
Yay!
Yeah, shout out to our friends who are probably going to be our first few listeners for a hot minute. Thank you to everyone that has helped support us and encourage us with doing just being there
Yes.
for us and helping with designs. We're really excited.
Listening to this idea over and over again. It's happening.
Finally. So we are a duo here. Morgan, feel free to introduce yourself first.
Okay, yeah. So, as you guys probably already know, my name is Morgan. I am currently 24 years old. I am a bit of a loud one, a big personality, but currently I am residing over in Germany right now with my husband, and just kind of going through the motions here. I've been spending a lot of time just, taking care of myself and enjoying the, free time that I've had here. So it's been a really great opportunity to start this podcast.
Yeah.
And then what about you, girl?
So my name is Lexus. It's like the car. It's not Alexis with an A, just Lexus. I'm 24 years old as well, still trying to figure out my dream career. As of now, I have just your standard 9 to 5. I do hair and makeup freelance, and I am obviously the more reserved and assertive one. But we're both really excited to go ahead and start this. So me and Morgan actually met in high school, but we didn't even become friends until after we graduated because I started doing her hair, and each session I did her hair, we would just spend the next 8 hours
Right.
oversharing and learning about each other. And then
really oversharing.
Yeah, you talk about a lot when you're together for 8 hours straight. But we really bonded over how we both have tried doing so many different creative outlets. Like I've tried YouTube, you've tried YouTube as well. And it's kind of brought us together. So we both have dabbled in social media. What have you tried to do in social media?
Oh my God, what have I not tried to do? I'm like trying to get my foot in the door anywhere. No, but I originally started with YouTube. I remember in high school, starting and just kind of filming wherever I could film, on our spirit days, football games. Did they make it to YouTube? No, but the intention was there. But I didn't actually start doing YouTube until about I want to say like about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And then I started a fitness page with one of my really good friends,
Which
literally
is great,
right
by the way.
before. I know, I still love that we are able to keep up with it. It's been such a good motivation for me, especially now. But yeah, that's been a really good outlet for me and for her. And then I recently, like a few months ago, started a I don't know if it's going to be like mainly for decor, but it is essentially like my boho page, and it's just going to be like all of my favorite things that I love about, moments in my life, and then my home and everything. And that one I really hope goes somewhere because that page makes me happy.
I really love that page. I would kind of identify it more in like the home lifestyle sort of thing right now. Yeah, I really like what you're doing. As for myself, I mean, with YouTube, I have been making YouTube videos on and off since I was in like 6th grade. And it was mostly like silly makeup tutorials that are totally cringe now. Most of them are like privated or deleted. I tried doing vlogging at one point. I've always been more interested in like the beauty space, but
yeah,
I just totally did not capitalize it when I should have. And it was just like my own self-doubt that halted me. But I really feel like I have a lot to talk about. So I was like, I've been wanting to start a podcast forever. And I know
Yeah.
that there are so many podcasts right now, and like, it just feels like everything's oversaturated, but it's still missing us. And I feel like we both
Exactly.
have a lot to offer. Um,
Yeah.
and then I really like the idea of being able to build a community and, being able to comfort people with our stories and experiences and, you know.
Yeah, I like the idea of us just like being that universal big sister for anybody that listens to us. Just because, you know, since being on certain platforms like TikTok and things like that, I've noticed that there are a lot of people out there that have shared a lot of similar experiences, um, like myself and yourself. And I think we can be really, really good like advocates for, how to get through those things. And
Mhm.
just like, I don't know, maybe a role model, or maybe like just like a different viewpoint that we're able to still control, hence our name. We are able to control our own narrative and move past those types of situations, because I know everybody, it's different for everybody when it comes to whether it's home life, whether it's mental health, anything along those lines. I know it can be different for everybody, but I think at the same time, to have somebody to, relate to know that, you're not alone in this situation, I think is very important. Community essentially is very important, because I think it helps a lot with, coming out of those situations. I know for me personally, in so many situations, with, for example, with like my MS, finding that community was really important for me. And I think it helped me kind of pull through that a lot quicker than I would have.
Mhm. And I definitely do think that all friendships and all relationships are super important. But I
Hmm.
think and I do want our podcast to be gender neutral in the sense that anyone should be
Hmm.
able to come to it. But I do think that having a female perspective is so important in your life. And I feel like a lot of
Hmm.
people are really missing that. So I think our main purpose is bringing attention to these fine details in life and how to get through them, because a lot of the things we may talk about could feel nuanced, but it's always going to resonate to someone at least a little bit.
Yeah.
um, so I'm definitely excited to hopefully let people know that they're not alone. And
Hmm.
do you want to just start going into our main topic of the day?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about mothers. I know we just kind of got over Mother's Day for the most recent holiday. So like how was that for you? How do you have like any experiences with, your Mother's Day?
So Mother's Day for me has been chaotic for as long as I could remember, pandemic or not. It has just it has never been a great time for me. I have actually,
Hmm.
each year that it comes up, I always look at my Facebook memories, and I am
Mm.
reminded of me 10 years ago still complaining about my mom on the day, because it somehow turned into something. A day of celebration turned into a day of chaos and drama, and
Right.
it's just the undertone of that holiday. I always dread it, and I personally haven't celebrated it with my mother in the last 2 almost 3 years.
Wow.
um
Yeah.
yeah, how was it for you?
This year especially was really hard. Last year was kind of easier, I guess. I want to say I had a little bit of a closer, if you can say that, relationship with my mom last year, but this year was, I thought, would have been a little bit easier to just kind of move on from the holiday, but no, still anxiety,
Yeah,
still guilt stemming around.
I feel like with these important holidays like dedicated to love, like
Mhm.
Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, just like the ones where our families really get together, there's so many expectations on you. And it's
Mhm.
like, am I going to go through with all of these expectations and like gifts and seeing each other when I have a strained relationship with my mother? Am I gonna like ignore
Right.
it for that day? To me, I can't, if there's no resolution, then I can't do it.
Mhm.
It feels phony to me. And like, at least for me, how I said
Exactly.
I haven't celebrated it, it's because I'm personally no contact with my mother. And that's just
Right.
a personal, it's, I made that choice just because she is just not in a good place in her life. And it was personally dragging me down a lot. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm glad that I made that boundary, but I do feel myself kind of mourning like during the holiday, because I see all
Yeah.
these like people, these kids celebrating their mothers, and it seems so genuine. And I don't know their stories and how legit it is or not, but it does make me feel bad because I so desperately want that for
You
myself.
want that. Exactly. I
Mhm.
totally get that. I see that all the time. And I grew up with, my close friends had both of their parents in the household. Literally, I want to say every single one of my close friends through high school and even middle school grew up with both parents in the household and what seemed like really strong connections with both of their parents. And it really made me feel like an outsider, not their fault obviously, but just like seeing that. So it made me feel like I just wanted that so bad. And so I think I worked really hard and I avoided a lot of things, or maybe not avoided, but I ignored a lot of things in my own relationship with my mom because I just wanted that dynamic with her so bad. Even as an adult, seeing like people celebrate this holiday and it looks so endearing and the relationship just looks like very strong, it makes me still want that as an adult. But I know I cannot, one, I cannot compare, my relationship with other people's because it is just not the same. And yes, I can want that, but at a point, I have to also be really realistic with myself that, I might not get that and that I have to be okay with that. I have to be willing to like move forward from that because those feelings don't bring me any good. Like saying, what if I learned this from my therapist, saying things like, what if I did this, or what if our relationship was like this? That's looking into like the past and that's like allowing anxiety in basically. It doesn't really bring any good to sit and, say like, what if?
For me at least, the reason I would say what really started my strained relationship with my mom is she was very neglectful
Mhm.
towards me growing up. I kind of had to pick up the slack and help a lot with my younger siblings. And I, in myself, kind of became a mother figure to my
Yes.
siblings. And in a sense, like we could dive deeper in this later, but in a sense, I almost feel like I should be celebrated on Mother's
I
Day.
was just about to say, if you, especially if you are the eldest daughter in the family dynamic, you are a mother,
Yeah,
period.
you helped raise those kids. Like
Yes.
eldest daughters should be celebrated on Mother's Day, but so definitely there's that neglect there. So I resented her for that. And then she did eventually try to like pick up the pieces. But when you already have that sort of attitude ingrained in you and you're going
Hmm.
through puberty and just everything in your life, I already was just like, I know what's up,
Checked out.
checked
Yeah.
out. And when I would see her trying it, I tried to accept it and everything, but at the same time, my parents decided to become very involved in church. And,
Hmm.
you know, when they started when my parents really started getting involved in our life, I already had a developed personality. I was very, I wouldn't say I was rebellious, but I was already very progressive with my views and
Hmm.
basically the complete opposite of the church. So I just knew I couldn't connect with my mom in that way. I didn't get the nurturing and I just wasn't willing to accept it unless it was more so meeting in the middle and not exactly the way that she wanted it to be.
You having to completely change yourself
Mhm.
to fit into what she can offer, basically. Like
Yeah.
you guys should be able to come together. Like I can totally understand where you're coming from. I used to have a really close relationship with my mom. Like my mom was my like who I wanted to be. Basically, she was a woman that I looked up to for a really long time. She always had it together. She always made things happen. My mom was a single mom, you know, for a good portion of like my childhood as, you know, a toddler growing up before she met my stepdad. And she always made things happen. You know, she made sure we saw family, that we did things together. We spent a lot of time together. And, you know, I wish I could say I could look back on those memories and feel really good, but they just get so far and far away because those are the only like really good, solid memories that I have that
Mhm.
of my mom, because things just start to decline in our relationship, you know, as I get older, when situations start to change, and when other things kind of start getting involved. And now, like, the relationship that I have with my mom, it's so hard to even call it a relationship just because of how it's, you might look at, like, whenever I'm around my mom and we are engaging, it might seem like playful, fun, you know, loving. And there is a lot of love there. I do love her, but it's not genuine. It's me basically masking so that I can get through a conversation with my mom without her being upset, getting, you know, defensive, things like that. And it's really exhausting on myself.
Do you feel like you're kind of playing the part and it's not
Mhm.
genuine?
Mhm.
Mhm.
100%. That's like, and I do it for my mom and I do it for my sisters because I can see like my sisters are on edge a lot. Seeing it, like seeing the dynamic with my sisters too, when I came to visit, it just, I can see the anxiety like just radiating off of them, you know, when my mom comes out and whenever we're all talking. So I really try to take a lot of that away from them and just kind of put the attention from my mom onto me. So that way they can kind of just breathe and be themselves and not feel like, you know, what they say is going to trigger anything in my mom that just is
Mhm.
completely blown out of proportion.
I think that probably both of our moms have some previous trauma and like unresolved issues. And
Yeah.
at least for me, it doesn't feel like my mom has any interest in resolving it or acknowledging it. And whenever I try to address our relationship and try to fix things, it turned into an argument rather than anything productive. I so badly want to talk about this thing and have a real connection, but
Yes.
I'm just not one of those people that can just sweep things under the rug and pretend that things are okay. It literally, like, if I'm in situations like that, I promise you it's the only thing I'm thinking about the entire time, and my anxiety is
Oh,
not good.
yeah.
And then I end up leaving early. Like, whenever I go to family events, and if there's a family member there that I'm not on good terms with, I'm there for maybe an hour and a half tops, and then
And
I'm
then we
gone.
go.
I
We
make my
show face
peace.
and we go.
Yeah, and I don't want relationships like that. And
Yeah.
I've always promised myself that I am going to be the person to break a lot of those generational like curses and
Yep.
just things that are the norm in my family that are just not okay if you
Mm-hmm.
remove the blood from it. And like,
Mm-hmm.
as far as my mother, I love her, but do I like her as a person? Remove the title of mother from her.
Right.
Totally narcissistic, treats people like shit. If she's not the center of
Right.
attention, if it's not exactly her way,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a good time.
You brought up a really good point there that I wanted to kind of talk about, where you said like take away the title of mother. Like, I think people should really think about that too. Is this a person that you would want, you know, to actively like be around and see and spend time with? If this wasn't like our mom, right? And this was just, say I was describing this person, you know, to you or to anybody, and I didn't say it was my mom, but I told you like how our interactions are, what our conversations have been, what our past, you know, relationships have been like. I feel like the advice would be very different, you know, without them knowing this is that I was talking about my mom. But then whenever you discuss things like this, especially with other family members, you know, it's always watered down. I feel like our situations with our moms get watered down and are like made to be seen like it's not that big of a deal, or that's your mom though, like that's, you just kind of got to build that relationship and da 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 da.
Yeah,
But
you just have to love her and respect her and accept her for who she is.
yeah,
And I'm
and I
like,
think people confuse like setting those boundaries is still a form of love. It's because I love you that I have to put that in place, because this is literally my last effort at keeping any kind of a relationship. And even when you set boundaries, it's a form, people see it as like, um, you know, a negative, versus like, this is me trying still. I am still like actively trying to keep
mhm,
what relationship we have, but it has to be where I feel safe and my mental health is okay as well, you
mhm.
know?
So when we're setting these boundaries, it's because we want you in our life. And I just
Mm-hmm.
feel like, oh, well, at least in my scenarios, it's always presented as an attack to the other person, no matter how calm I am, no matter how many facts I bring in. If someone's not willing to just reciprocate your energy, it
Mm-hmm.
kind of feels pointless. And that's at the point where I'm at. And I've
Yeah.
tried like posing maybe like interventions with like multiple family members so we could talk to just my mom about the way that she is and
Mm-hmm.
try to create a healthy dynamic. But it
Mm-hmm.
just it turns into, but that's your mom, just go with it. And I
Yep.
think that's what so many people have accepted for years, and it's just invalidating and it's
It's just a
lazy.
way to excuse. Yeah, it's because it's an uncomfortable conversation to have with people. And essentially when you're expressing concerns, especially to family, I think it's important to see that that's essentially a cry for help. Like, I need help. I don't know how to go about this relationship with my mom. I need advice, especially when you're trying to talk about this when you're a child,
Mhm.
nonetheless, and you feel like, I need help. You're an adult, like help me. Like, what is some advice? And to get kind of turned away in that way, it's so I don't even know the word. It makes you feel really alone in that situation. Like, it kind of makes you feel a little crazy that am I really overreacting?
I think we've just been gaslit to believe that
Yeah,
our feelings are crazy and that we're just being sensitive. And
right.
we're too educated on mental health and healthy relationships at this point. You and I both go to therapy. Like, are we going to listen
Right.
to a mental health professional that is hearing this from, like, at least trying to pick out the most unbiased version of the story you're telling? Or are we going to listen to people that are enablers?
Hmm.
It's a lot.
People that will tell you like, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. You got me. Like, I'm always going to go to bat for you, but will never address the person that is causing all of this. I've also had situations where, I've it's been really hard to do it, but I've sat down and talked to my mom and like told her about certain things, that have affected me and that I really want us to, get through together, trying to have those heart to hearts, and they never go well. And it makes me feel like it made me feel kind of hopeless in that sense that, I can't say anything. I can't have, an emotional conversation with my mom, um, to show her, like, to me, that's me showing her, like, I love you so much. I really want this relationship for us. These are some things that kind of concern me and I want us to move forward with. That isn't, of interest to her. And so why am I putting myself, in this situation? One, knowing that, two, like allowing my mom to think that we have this amazing relationship because I'm just actively ignoring those very important things that are going on. And then also allowing like my family, like you said, to essentially gaslight me and thinking that like, oh, it's your mom, so let's, just try. That's the thing that gets me is I have been trying. I
Mhm.
can't be the only one though. It is not a one-way street, and it is very exhausting, and I've spent a lot of my time on that street by myself, trying, and my mom just reaping the rewards essentially, or reaping the benefits of me being there.
You know what else is exhausting though is the people will well, at least in my situation, my mom has often pretended like things are all kumbaya between us, posting about me on
Mhm.
Facebook, like
Ugh,
giving me endless praises, like on my birthdays, writes a whole
right.
novel about how she's so happy she gave birth to me, when 2 weeks before that day totally was against,
Screaming. Yeah.
yeah, against everything Lexus. And then you go
Hmm.
on social media and you're like, this is so freaking fake. And then there's all these people liking and commenting on it. And I'm like,
Ah,
why are we hiding behind this fantasy that things are
right.
perfect? And it has no, like, it doesn't make me feel good to even see that. If anything,
It doesn't.
it makes me more ashamed, and it doesn't have
Hmm.
any value. And,
Hmm.
it's funny, like when parents do things like that, like post about you, they think that you should be grateful. And
Hmm.
it's like, for what? I would be grateful if like you told me that, face to face, and your actions
If you
followed.
showed me that. Yeah,
Yeah. The words are
exactly.
nothing if your actions don't match.
In my family sometimes, like, but with my mom especially, I will see like her posts and I'll be like, wow, that's really interesting. Like, who's she talking about? Because it can't be about me. It can't be about me and her. And I used to see those things, especially when I was in high school, and I would see her like go on and on about like mine and my sister's accomplishments and how proud she was and just speak so highly. And it made me feel like, wow, she's sitting in her room or she's sitting in the living room typing all of this for other people. This isn't something that she's actually proud of us for. She wants other people to be proud of her for having kids that are, excelling or doing well. Because if she was posting that because she was proud of us, we would feel that. We would feel that in the home. We would feel that,
Mhm.
right there in her presence. But, you know, people on Facebook don't see that, the what goes on in the household. And it would frustrate me because I wish she would put that time and effort that she did in those posts into our actual relationship.
With us talking about this, I don't want it to seem like this is just a whole episode about bashing our mothers and everything.
Right.
It's not. It's to tell you that this stuff is not normal. It is not normal to feel uncomfortable when your parent walks in the room, have the
Hmm.
energy shift. It's not normal to
To
have,
memorize your parents' footsteps, like coming down the hall, like to prepare yourself for an argument. Like,
yeah.
it shouldn't be a constant state of like being on edge, and you shouldn't have to feel, copious amounts of anxiety just having a normal conversation, with your parent. It shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah. And you should be able to freely talk to your parent about boundaries you want to set, or just letting them
Hmm.
know like how something they did upset you. And I personally, I'm able to do that with my dad now, but that has,
Yeah, me
he's
too.
really put in the work to have that growth with me. And we have an
Yep.
amazing relationship now. And I've so desperately have tried over and over again to have that with my
Yeah.
mom. And it just feels like there's no avail. So at this point, I think it's a personal freaking problem. Um,
Yeah.
and it does make me wonder, like, I know that there's factors in her past and her growing up that made her the way she is, but at what point does a person take accountability? I would think that like the
Right.
second you give birth to a child, you are on it. And that is
Hmm.
wishful thinking. And I hope that I am on it whenever I become a mother, if I'm lucky enough to one day.
Yeah.
I so desperately want to have the best
I
relationship.
mean, we've taken some really great first steps, at the expense of our own mental health and in some situations. But like my dad made a good point. I was talking with him the other day, about my and my mom's relationship, and he just kind of let me know that, people will teach what they were taught. And that's true to a point, but you have to be willing to be better than a lot of situations. Like I understand that my mom was also in a household that was pretty aggressive and probably not the best. Um, but I just don't understand, like, if you see things in your own like childhood that you just did not like, why would you bring those into your child's next, like, into your child's life? Why wouldn't that be a thought of, this is something that I don't want? Because that's something that me and my sisters have to constantly think about, is like, we are taking mental notes. I don't want that. This isn't something that I want to bring into my household. This is something that I have to actively practice just in my relationship with me and my husband alone, and relationships with my friends and my family, because I don't want it, and I don't want to get comfortable in that setting. And I'm constantly talking with my sisters about that, making sure, it sucks that's something that we have to do, but and that's the work. That's the work right there that you have to put in, to make sure that you are breaking those cycles.
Yeah, for sure. And, to our parents' credit, I do think that when they were children, that they probably thought similar things to us. They probably had their own issues with their parents where they're like, I'm never going to do that to my kids. But they didn't have the luxury of being able to talk about it with their friends kind of intuitively the way that you and I are. They didn't have access to therapy, any like mental health professionals. So I do understand that in a sense.
Yeah.
But when you're an adult, like in 2021, like, come on, like you gotta work through
Let's
those
take a
already.
look.
And I know, and I do think they fall back on those kind of abusive tendencies that they themselves probably hated when they were younger, because it's comfortable to them and it's all that they know. Like, not to get like super dark or anything, but like there's that argument that people constantly bring up that, oh, I was beat as a kid, so I'm fine beating my children.
I turned out fine.
Yeah, I turned out fine. And I'm like, honey, there's a lot of ways to go through that, but did it feel good when you were a kid? Probably not. Probably made you feel really unsafe. And there's a lot of there's a lot of different abuse that isn't physical, that is going to follow you for the rest of your life, that you have to work through. And why would you want to put your kid through that? Like, your child didn't ask to be born, so like, give them the best. And I really have a lot of hope for our generation and Gen Z and even lower, that we are going to be breaking a lot of like setting records, breaking boundaries at this point.
And it's because we're at a point where we are able to talk about it. We know it's something that needs to be talked about. We know these are hard conversations, but hard conversations have to be had. And, I think that the stigma with therapy is slowly going away, because it's become, I would be lying if I said that whenever my first time going to therapy a few years ago, I felt really uncomfortable. I didn't want to go. I was thinking like, dang, this must be like a really bad spot for me if I have to go to therapy. And with my new therapist, it's been completely reworked on how I think about therapy and how I view it. And I'm super grateful that I have that opportunity to go and see a therapist. And going back to what you said about our parents, like, imagine that stigma then, imagine trying to tell their parents, I think I should, even having that conversation. And there is that sense of just all this tough love, especially with past generations, like not really being able to express yourself or be emotional around your family back then. So like you said, like, I know that there are a lot of generational things that play a part, but also going with what you said, you chose to have a child. That should be your main priority. You don't bring your past traumas into this child's life that knows nothing about it and has nothing to do with it. That's your job at that point to, move forward and break those cycles. So,
I did hear, I think, a reoccurring theme with, my parents are Gen Xers, I believe. Yeah, anywhere from Gen Xers to like elder millennials. My parents are pretty young. They're like early 40s. And the thing that they always tried to put in my head is, I want you to have the things I couldn't have. And, I feel like our generation is going to more so be like, I want you to have a childhood you don't have to heal from. And that is totally my goal. And I'm so glad that mental health is being so like, it's just being talked
open.
about.
And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's so important. And I think that that's going to be huge for, for this generation. And when we like start to have kids of our own, it's going to be really huge. And I have those conversations with Brain all the time. Like, I want our kids to be, I want our kids to feel safe in our home. I want our kids to feel comfortable expressing themselves. I want our kids to, you know, learn things like, I don't even know how to explain it. I just want them to view the world in their way, not in the way that we're going to drill into them. I mean, there's obviously practices, but being where, our parents said, I want you to have the things that I never had. And so drilling in like this sense of being this state of perfection. I remember a lot of my anxiety stemmed from having to be this like absolutely perfect person and not having those emotions or not having those bad days. It caused so much unnecessary anxiety.
I totally relate. And, me and my therapist yesterday were talking about this, and I was just telling her I have a really difficult time now expressing emotion without feeling like I'm overreacting or that I look
Yes.
stupid or just, and I'm like, why am I like this? Like, there's certain situations where I know it's okay for me to express my emotions, but something in me, like, it literally feels like I'm frozen or something, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't laugh as loud as I want to. I can't
Mm-hmm.
sing, dance, do whatever,
Yeah,
because
you're constantly keeping tabs on yourself or like watching yourself. And that's like what sucks too, because how do you break that? How do you let yourself know that it's what I'm talking about is okay? I'm allowed to, you know, discuss these feelings that are going on. How do you like get yourself comfortable with that after so many years of feeling like you couldn't?
yeah, and I think I felt that way because I was so managed as a child rather than parented. I think, like, at
Yeah.
least for me, my mom felt like a manager. She didn't feel like a mom. It was like, you
Mm-hmm.
know how it is when you're well, we both haven't worked in the food service industry in a while, but when
I
you're
know.
just with your coworkers and there's maybe not as much work, so you're kind of just
Yep.
like laughing, chit-chatting, and then you can hear your supervisor coming in and the
Yep.
entire vibe changes
It
and like you're
shifts.
you're on edge. I was like that
Yeah.
every single day of my childhood, and I could not wait to be 18 and move the fuck out of that
I
situation. And
know. And that is literally like, did you move out when you were 18?
I was kicked out by my
Me
mom.
too. What? No way.
Yeah, oh my
Me
god.
too. That's
The
isn't that so crazy? But it ended up being like honestly one of
best
the
thing for
best.
me.
Yeah, I needed that last push. I was kicked out 3 times by my mom in the course of like being in high school and just house hopping from family to family basically until
Hmm.
it was kicked out for 2 weeks staying with my dad, and then it was, oh, so when are you coming back home? And me just coming back home, and then I was kicked out for the entirety of my freshman year of high school and lived with my grandma. And then it was, I want you to come back home. And
That
then
that's so crazy that this was happening to you when we were both in high school, because I never would have thought, seeing
me
you
either.
walking by, that you were going through that. And I think
Yeah.
that's just a testament to how strong we had to be, and I really wish that
Yeah.
we didn't have to. But we pushed through and we
We sure
survived
did.
without, we in a sense had to mother ourselves to become the women that we are
Mm-hmm.
today. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that takes a special type of strong person to
I
get through
know.
that. But like, I always say, like, I whenever my parents divorced, and I always say the best day of my life was when my parents got divorced, because I was so much closer to my dad, and like my mom kicked me out and I was like, "Hey dad, what's up? Moving in." And
Right.
I'm so lucky that I at least had one supportive parent, and he
Yeah.
wasn't like, I became like, after I got kicked out, I had just like literally like saved day. I was like, I'm getting a job. I am saving for a
Right.
car. I already know what I'm going to do after high school, like on it. So my dad really didn't have to worry about me. I just needed his at least like support. in a
Lexus, we are literally this. We're the same. It's just insane to me. As soon as I got kicked out that third time, I was actually staying with my stepmom, but it was all right. We need to get a car. We need to get a job. We need, getting everything situated for college and everything. It was like all of this stuff having to grow up in the course of like a couple of months, just having to get all of this ready with no way to prepare because I just got thrown to the wolves basically. And I just knew that I needed to start building a life where I had security in my own right, where nobody was going to, pull the rug from under me. Everything that I had was going to be because I worked really hard for it. And it was because of situations like that. And going to what you said about like your dad, like my mom and my dad never got married, but I was only allowed to see my dad every other weekend and then on some holidays. So yeah, I didn't really have like I had a relationship with my dad, but not as close as we do now.
Mhm.
I call my dad every single day, sometimes, 2 times a day we talk.
God, you're making me
And
want
it
to
was
call my dad.
see, I know, I'm probably gonna call him after this. But it's like because we had to have a hard conversation. Just kind of expressing, how a lot of these situations affected me. And we had a really hard conversation and he listened to me and I listened to him. And we both acknowledged each other in a way that I've always wanted with my mom. But I got that with my dad, luckily. And we have such a true relationship where I don't fear telling my dad anything. And I don't think he does either. And that's just made it so much easier. And then in those times where I am missing like that relationship with my mom, I can kind of just look and be super fortunate that I was able to grow such a close relationship with my dad. Because I don't know, like I couldn't even imagine having that relationship with both of my parents. That would be really hard. And right now, like people can say what they want about my dad, but he's here for the times that I need him. Like I need him. I'm always going to need him, but regardless of what past situations where we were able to have that conversation, that's the difference, is like having that hard conversation and being able to then get closure and move forward. And I didn't get that with my mom. And I feel like if I got that opportunity and we had the opportunity to really sit down and both have an understanding of each other and get that closure, I couldn't even imagine our conversation. But we're not going to get into that because that doesn't bring anything good.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like, or I don't, at least for me, when my mom saw how close that me and my dad were, my mom got extremely jealous and
Mm-hmm.
was like, you love
Mm-hmm.
your dad more than me. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
so my dad, the man that I call my dad, is not my biological father. He technically adopted
Okay.
me and my um, younger brother when he got with my mom, and then he had my youngest brother with my mom. But since I was
Mm-hmm.
2 years old, this man has been my dad. He's on my birth certificate. And, I really like, I'm so moved by the fact that my dad was maybe anywhere from 21 to 23 years old when he took on 3 kids
Right.
and married, like took responsibility and married my mom, worked, and like we're 24 now. Can you imagine having 3 kids right now? Like, of course,
Yeah, no.
like, and to my mom's credit, she was super young. Of course they were going to make mistakes, but my dad has really owned up for everything, and we can have really
Mm-hmm.
frank conversations, and I'm so thankful for that. And I know that if my mom could admit her own fault and be like, you didn't deserve that, and i
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm never going to get this. I really
Mm-hmm.
wish I could. I kind of feel like my mom owes me a thank you for the things that I had to put up with and for the help I assisted her with when she
Yeah.
was at her lowest and when she wasn't a parent to myself and my brothers.
Yeah.
And like, I just harbor such resentment over that like, if we're not going to talk it out, I'd rather just not have a
Not
relationship.
talk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I really commend you for that because I'm still going through that process with trying to figure out what it is that this relationship is that I have with my mom, because I have done the boundaries. I've set those boundaries, but I've even like with Mother's Day, I was battling through, anxiety and guilt. And, unfortunately, like my guilt just kind of was a lot, where I ended up, doing something for my mom for Mother's Day. And to me, that was like, I went against my own boundaries that I'm supposed to be setting, and to some people that might seem like, oh, it's just flowers, it's not a big deal. It is a big deal, because that just allows my mom to think that we are a lot closer than what we actually are. And it ends up causing hurt, because my mom will then say certain things or react in certain ways if that momentum doesn't stay, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't give that to my mom, because we do not have that relationship. We don't have that. And so I'm still learning on what's going to be best. And I've talked with my therapist on what's best. And, you know, I don't really know what the future holds, but I know I'm gearing towards no contact with my mom. And it's really unfortunate to have to say, because of how much I love her. But it's, as the years go on, it's just, especially with my health now and with like battling with MS, I can't allow for um, the stress, and the anxiety of it all. It's not good for me. And it's just something that it's been hard, but I think about it almost every single day.
So do
That like,
I. And,
yeah.
I try to power through it, pretend like I'm fine, but really, like, at the end of the day, if my mom were to get her shit together and talk to me woman to woman and be like, I really
Mhm.
want to take accountability, work things out, let's have this relationship and really put the effort in, I would be 100% here for it.
Me too. And I
But
think about that scenario so much on like, maybe it'll happen, maybe it'll happen. And I think that's where I get some kind of like, I get heartache too, because
mhm,
I'll come to terms, like I'll do a lot of work where I can come to terms with the fact that I'm probably never going to get the closure that, I deserve and that is needed to rebuild the relationship. And so I'll get really comfortable with that. Realization, and I'll be okay. And then I'll end up letting my mom in a little bit, and she'll just bulldoze right over all of that. And then something will happen, and it just will bring me back to square one, where like my mom still sees certain situations the way that she sees them. And it brings me to a point where now I have to rebuild where I was just at. And it
mhm.
causes like this like domino effect for me, where I'm left by myself having to pick up all of these pieces of like just hurt, anger, you know, anxiety, just all of these things that I have to now pick up and put back together by myself, because my mom doesn't see what she's doing, but she sees me
Yeah.
as just as like doing something so wrong to her.
Yeah. And like, just to start closing things out,
Yeah.
the I often wonder, does my mom think that she did anything wrong? Does she think that she had any part in, you know, my reactions, basically? Like, I'm not acting this way for nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
I so badly want her to, just see, hey, I did this. I should probably talk to my daughter.
Some
But
accountability.
at least for me right now, the boundaries I have set are as follows. And I am no contact with my mom. And the way that I personally did it was I let her know that her recent actions really hurt me. And we had some choice words for each other. But I was like, until you do X, Y, and Z, I cannot have you in my life, because it's her situation is a lot more complicated than I can care to get into right now. But
Right.
I'm like, it's dangerous. My time is valuable. My energy is valuable. My mental health
Mm-hmm.
is very important. And
Mm-hmm.
I cannot take away from my day to day life that is already chaotic and busy in myself, because I am now an adult, to
Yeah.
babysit you and go about, like, worry about your feelings when you're not being considerate of mine. And, like, the most important conversations are these uncomfortable ones. And until she is ready to have that uncomfortable conversation and work through it, I guess I am I'm good on my own. It really
Right.
does hurt, but like to anyone listening, I'm not telling anyone that they need to go no contact with your mother, but sometimes it is more harm than good to even keep them at arm's distance, because
Yep.
you are going to be sitting with that heartache. And yes, I do have heartache sometimes, but that's really when I like dwell on it. But I'm
But
really
imagine
working.
it if you were going through that, like that off and on type of situation with the good, the bad, the good, the bad, like
Mhm.
over and over again. That's something that's, it's not good, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't do it. And that's why I did go no contact, because I was so desperately trying to pull her out of situations that were really bad for her. And,
Hmm.
I found myself being her mother. And I'm like, this ain't
Hmm.
right. You are 40 in your 40s. I'm trying to enjoy my 20s right now. This is not the right dynamic. And
Right.
so I set my boundaries. And, if people don't like it, and if people don't want to be in your life because you have respect for yourself, that's really what it is. Boundaries is having
Yeah.
respect for yourself. If they don't
And it
like that,
doesn't have
then
to be, it boundaries don't have to be this like negative thing. And I think that some people will see that and take offense, and it's not anything to be like offensive about. It's literally me telling you I want a relationship with you, but this is what we have to do in order to have this relationship. This is what I need for myself in order to have my relationship. You set boundaries in almost anything or everything that you do. You set boundaries at work. You know what I mean? At If you're at school, like you're not going to let somebody talk to you any type of way. You would let that be known, like, that's disrespectful. You do that in any day-to-day life, and doing it with a person in your family should be no different, and it shouldn't be looked any other way. It's
agreed.
just me letting you know, like, I need to do this for essentially for me, for my mental health, but so that way we can maintain and have a relationship still. It's not me trying to cut you out, it's me trying to keep you in. But if you can't respect it, then that's obviously what it's going to turn into.
What advice would you have for people that are wanting to set these boundaries? Like, how did I know that you're that you are like kind of like almost like
Mhm.
self-preserving your feelings and kind of
Mhm.
keeping your mom a little bit more at a distance, but do you think you're going to change
Mhm.
anything or set any more boundaries, or like what are your plans with that?
I think I keep my mom close right now, because of my sisters. I do still have sisters, back home that live with my mom. And I think the reason why I maintain any kind of relationship with my mom is so that way I can be, I don't want to say a punching bag, but I want to be that frontliner for my sisters. Like if something's going on, I kind of know certain ways to talk to my mom where
Mhm.
it takes the attention off of them. You know what I mean? And I can kind of like talk her up and make her feel really good, which is so insane to have to like to hear myself say out loud. But that takes away that attention from my sisters. So that way they're not having to go through that with my mom.
Mhm.
But some advice that I have is to really like sit down, write down like your situation. When I first went to therapy and I was talking to my therapist about the relationship with my mom, he did have me write down like on my own time, obviously, but just writing down like what when I think of the relationship with my mom, what does it make me feel? Like, how does it make me feel? And I couldn't even get through like a paragraph without getting just completely overwhelmed with emotion and just being so sad. And I realized that whenever I let my mom in that way and I let my mom control me in that way, it causes me just immense anxiety and immense sadness. And I can't let that affect me. And my diagnosis, I think, was a turning point um, in setting boundaries because it's neither here nor there. But my flare was supposedly caused by just a large amount of stress, and that can be with the move, but I know it also is, a lot of my situations and my traumas coming to the front of my focus by being home so much.
And then I don't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if you really discussed like your condition. Did we discuss your condition and like
Not really. I just kind of I went over it like really fast. I just said, "Oh, I have MS."
Do you want to just so
yeah.
Okay, sorry, go on.
Yeah,
I just wanted
okay.
just in case people were confused, like, yes, you have like this condition.
That's
and
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when recently after moving to Germany, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I ended up having a really large flare that kind of it demobilized me for a few months, and it was really scary. I didn't know what was going on. I had to do a lot of self-reflection, and I had to really reevaluate, how I was handling certain things and what I was giving energy to. And I noticed, I was giving a lot of my energy to these harmful relationships, and I needed to put that, to the side. I could not give any more of my energy to that because of quite literally what it did to my health. And so, yeah, getting diagnosed with MS, having that happen to me really put a lot of things into perspective. And that's how I started to begin standing firm with a lot of my boundaries, talking with not just about it with my mom or with my dad, but everybody, not giving power, not feeling bad about, certain situations that I made, or the thought of, oh, I don't want this to hurt anybody's feelings or make anybody upset. It wasn't about anybody. I was doing this for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my turning point. Was I needed to do this for my health because it was causing me distress.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that you are doing a lot better now. And even if the average person probably won't experience your condition, but the stress and emotional trauma that we do go through is in our bodies, and it's in our it's in our heart, it's in our brain. You can feel this tension. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but you could feel it in your body when you are stressed. And I understand that like I said, not everyone can go no contact with their mom, and not everyone, in your situation, you kind of have to compromise in order to keep the peace and still maintain relationships. And that's probably what a lot of people are going to be leaning a lot more towards. And with that, I think you really have to make peace with yourself. And I really recommend people going to therapy, taking mental health days.
Oh, yeah.
Really taking care of your own body and protecting your time and your mind. And
yeah.
If I were still talking to my mom, I would just take her in doses. That's what people would tell me all the time. And that's really, I feel like, the best thing you can do when you have to have a relationship. And I really hope that with us talking about this, that at least one person resonates in a way.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
It's okay. We're resonating with each other.
This is our therapy session. It's an extended visit.
Exactly.
Well, I feel really good about everything that we talked about. And
I do too.
I just feel like getting this sort of stuff off your chest and maybe just hearing about it from other people's perspectives is really good for the average person. I feel like how I said earlier, I would have never known you were going through this when we were in high school together.
Exactly.
And, there's probably so many other people that are as well. And hearing us, I think, will make them, not feel so alone. And you can take control of the situation and move on with it. And I really wish I knew the advice that I'm getting right now back then, so I didn't have to go through all the heartache that I did.
Yes. And that's exactly why I refer to us as the big sister, because we are the trial and error in life. You know what I mean? The big sibling is always the trial, the error. And that's our job, is to make it easier for, our younger siblings to kind of navigate through. And that's all I want to be for my siblings. I want to make things easier for them. I want them to know, like, I if nobody else can understand what you're going through, that I know and I understand, and I support you and I am here for you. And I tell my sisters that, when we have certain conversations, that, like, don't let anybody make you feel like what you're going through isn't valid or is being, over exaggerated. It's not. I completely get it, and I'm here for you. If you feel like you're alone, you're not. I am 100% here for you, and that's all
And
that I can really
mhm.
say on that.
And when you're going through these things, don't let that voice in your head that tells you that this is not important, you're crazy. Don't let that voice
Mhm.
win, because when you're going through something for the first time, it does feel like the end of the world, because it's your first time
Mhm.
going through it, especially if you're young. Like,
How will I
everything
recover?
is new. And, like, we're going to be talking about a lot of different stuff on this podcast.
Yeah,
And I really hope that people continue to listen to it and that we continue to make it. And I think this was a good first episode. But do you want
me
to,
too.
like, our whole shtick is kind of like, that's it for your session. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
that's the time. That's all the time we've got for today.
yeah, that's all the time. Go pay at the checkout. Um, we don't have any sponsors, so just go follow us on our Instagrams and stuff.
Yes.
What's
Follow us on
yours?
our Instagram, switching the narrative. It's going to
Yeah,
be
switching the
really
narrative.
exciting.
We're gonna have some designs up eventually. It's a work in
Yeah,
progress,
we're
but
working on
all right.
it.
I will talk to you another time, and then
All right.
all
Me or the
right.
audience or both?
Yeah, well, we'll
We'll
talk
talk
them
to
through
you
both.
another time.
Yeah, okay. So that concludes this episode, and then hopefully we'll see you on the next one.